Hey everybody, just wanted to touch base and tell you what I'm up to today. I have a 2007 Saturn Vue, the 5-speed, and over the years it's been getting more and more difficult to shift, and in the wintertime it seems to be getting worse, and with the temperature getting lower it seems to bind up the linkage even more. It's actually not linkage, it's a shift cable. So this winter, about a couple weeks ago, it actually broke. I was driving, it was about 2 blocks from the house, and it just heard a pop, and then the shifter was just not working at all. So today, it cost me about $300 to get the connector fixed, but the shift cable is still binding up, and it's still very difficult to shift. So I don't want to break the parts that I've already had put in there. So today I'm going to put the new shift cables in, and I'll show you how to do it. If your shifter is binding up, this could save you a couple of $100, because it cost me $85 to have it towed, which is actually not bad, and then an hour's worth of labor and $85 worth of parts, which basically the part that broke was the part that connects the shifter itself to the shift cable. So today we're going to replace the shift cable, hopefully get things back in order, and I'll show you how to do it. First thing we're going to need to do is just remove the part of the shifter right here, and this just pulls up. You might need to get a screwdriver, but I've had this on and off a couple of times, so it's not terribly tight. Just try to be a little gentle with it so you don't break the plastic, because this thing does have 230,000 miles on it. You can pull that back. You can see the way the shifter works, and this part right here is the part that actually broke. This is the cable, and then there's part of it over here. This one did not break, but it was replaced as well, and then there's a cable on that side too. So you can see it's just a little difficult to shift. So eventually, over time, that plastic is going to become stressed and it's going to break as well. So prefer that to not happen and leave me sitting someplace that I don't want to be. So let's replace that cable. So from the engine side, there's the firewall, and that's where the 2 shift cables come through the firewall, and they basically just snake down behind the engine under the exhaust manifold. And then over here they are connected to the transmission down there below the water line, the heater line. So that should be not terribly fun to, I'm sorry, they're on this side. This is where they actually connect. They go through, and there's a holder down there that needs to be undone. Pretty sure the only thing we need to do is just pop them off, which should be able to be done with a screwdriver, and then take them out of that thing. What I plan to do is use just some wire, and I'm going to wrap that around the inside the cables when I take them off of the shifter. And then I'm just going to pull this through the firewall, and then tie the wire around the new cable and pull it back. The cables come pre-installed with that big rubber grommet there, so all you need to really do, I believe, is just push that rubber grommet back in there, get the cables lined up right, reconnect them. I'm really kind of hoping this will not take too terribly long. We'll see. Okay, so here's a little update. So you have the clips here, all the wires. Take those off so you can get the main part of the console out of the way. If you want to take this off, there's a hog nose ring under here. I decided not to take that off. In addition to being really cheap, I also like to take apart the least amount of stuff as I can. I did find that taking the thing that was out here, I'm not sure what that is, like a little glove box or a little storage compartment. There's 4 7mm screws in there. And then I had a little bit of an issue figuring out how this comes apart. You have to reach underneath of it, and then there's a little thing that you just push up and wiggle, and this pops right up. That took me a little bit to figure out, and I couldn't find any videos on how to do it. And then these are you just push these back. Let me show you. I have the new cables out here, so you just basically push that, and then it lifts it up, and then when it locks back in. So here's the new bushing that goes through the firewall. So it looks like I'm getting pretty close to being done. All I got to do is pull the cable out, and then these should just pop right off of there like we talked about before, and hopefully I'll be done shortly. Okay, so now on to the next part. Found it most easy to drop your hand in with the screwdriver like that. See if I can get you. And then pry up on the linkage. I can't really get a good shot of it because my arm's in the way, but there's the linkage. So my hand is back here in that open area. Then I pried up. Alright guys, so we can see that my little trick so far has worked pretty well. That is the hole where the shift cables come out of, and there's the cable. Now they did not want to come out of there together. They're they're paired. So what I did is I offset the two cables with the wide part. I tied this, the wire that I'm using, I tied that around the back side of the first clip, and then I tied it a little bit offset so they can go through there one at a time, and it'll still be able to pull all the way through that hole. So I'm having a little bit of trouble getting to the getting the connectors off of the transmission side. I got the ends popped off, but the connectors are all gummed up with dirt, and when I pull them back, I can't get enough leverage on them to pop them up. So I'm still working on some things to get that remedied, but it looks like we're coming into to the close of this. So hopefully I'll be done in a few minutes, and I'll be able to wrap it up and be good to go. Alright guys, as you can see, there are the new cables in. Still have the old cables there too, and they are in the console. As you can see, I had to take the shifter out. My trick with the wire was kind of slick, but not as slick as I thought. The cables went underneath of other wiring looms and things in there, and we're getting stuck on everything, and I just couldn't get it out that way. The white cable I put in second and ran into a serious snag which I could not clear. So after I took this out, I was able to get the black cable in. But if you look on the passenger side wheel well, way up in the corner there, you'll see where the two cables come through. And what was happening with the white cable, it was getting caught on the carpeting or underneath of a plastic body panel, and it kept going underneath of the body panel, so I couldn't get the cable to come in. So I basically had to lay under here and then pry it with a screwdriver just a little bit and put the screwdriver there so that when I pushed it in, it would go over. And then as you can see, all the cuts and scrapes on my hands. There's lots of sharp little things inside that little console. You can do it without tying something on there and pulling it. It's just a pretty bit of a bitch. I cut that part out because the language was kind of colorful. So the last thing I got left to do is to fish the cables over to here. I got to get the old cables off of the connector. They are all gummed up with 12 years worth of road grime. So I'm gonna have to figure that out, and then pop them on the transmission, put the console back together, and we should be buttoned up in a few minutes. And when you try to move these old cables, oh my god, they don't want to move at all. I'm surprised I was able to even shift. I'm pushing as hard as I can with my thumb, and it's just barely pushing in. So that clearly is the problem. Okay, back again. Unfortunately, I didn't get it finished yesterday. I had some things that I needed to take care of. And today, ran into an incredible amount of frustration. Some of it's just dumb stuff. You look down in there. There's the star bolt that holds on the bracket for the shifter linkage. And I am usually super good about putting everything someplace safe. And when I took the bracket off, be careful, there are 2 bushings, and then there's 2 rubber grommets, and then there's another rubber grommet that goes on top of the, I think it's a vent for the inside of the top of the transmission. All of those things dropped on the ground when I pulled the retainer off, and I don't know whether I dropped the bolt. I was not able to find it. I ended up having to go get another replacement bolt. So if you are dumb and do the same thing, it's an M8 1.25 by 35 millimeter. So I put a new one of those in there. I struggled to get the once I got the retainer back in, I tried to get the new cables back in, and they just would not go in. No matter what I did, you just could not get a handle on it. I ended up pulling the retainer back off, pulling the cables back to the other side of the motor, pulling the cables all the way through back up to here so I could have them up in the top part of the motor where I could easily get at them with some more tools. I even tried to sand down the retainer. That didn't help. I finally was able to get the retainer, and I had to use a pair of vice grips or a pair of large pliers to get them to go into the retainer. I finally got that in. That was an incredible struggle. Then you come to the inside where you get the luxury of, having to adjust the linkage. I got it pretty close, and then the little caps on the top of it weren't on there tight all the way while I was adjusting it, and they popped off. And of course, they go right down into the abyss, and they pop down there. So I tried to be slick and put a rag down there, but they just seem to go past everything. They're extremely difficult to get those clips to go back in. I ended up having to take everything apart 3 or 4 times, and it just seemed like every time I tried to do something fell down into that hole. So I do have a magnetic wand to pick things up. I use that, and then of course the plastic clips drop down there, and I tried everything. I started pulling the console apart, and then I decided I wasn't going to do that. I remembered I had some plumber's putty, so that saved me. I put that on the end of my magnetic wand, and voila, I was able to fish that out of there somehow. It was just absolutely frustrating and really just a bad time. Everything in there is sharp and cuts you and wants to just not work. It definitely is something to think about when you're gonna attempt this. So, plan for that. Plan to drop something down there. It's gonna happen, and if it doesn't, good on you. When I had this worked on at the mechanic shop the other week, I noticed that I think the original retaining clips were in there, and sure enough, guess what I found in the bottom of that bin after I took the shifter and all the crap out of it? I found the new retaining pins clips at the bottom, so I fished them out and am using them. Anyway, it's all back together. It shifts. It's not really hard to adjust the linkage. Mine, I had it all back together. Everything was good, and it wouldn't shift into reverse. I had to take it all apart again. So you might get good at that. Hopefully, my mistakes will help you to not make those mistakes, and you can get it done a little quicker than I did. And unfortunately today I'm fighting a bit of a headache, and having to run to the store and get extra bolts, that certainly didn't help any. But anyway, it appears to be done now. All I got left to do is to button it up and plug all the accessories back in. I think I might drive it around a little bit before I go doing all that, just to make sure that everything is in there and seated and positively locked in, because if it's not and it pops out while you're driving it, you're gonna have to jerry rig something on the side of the road to get home. So definitely think a couple laps around the block before you go driving cross country would be a terrific idea. Also, another tip, a lot of that stuff is dirty and greasy. Somehow it's, put something over your seat, and then you have this pile of stuff right there. That is the graphite that they use to lubricate the cable. As it breaks down, it comes out of the cable, and it made a big pile of it in the shifter. In the shifter linkage, there's a big tray that holds everything, and I had to take that, and that was the one part I took out. That fell over in the passenger compartment, and there's a big pile of that I get to vacuum up. But it shifts smooth as butter now, I tell you what. Definitely worth doing if you're having the shifter. I did see a video earlier about how to re-lubricate it, and here it is. The guy pulled this black thing out, and I tried to do that. He said to pull that out, and then this is the actual cable here, and then to lubricate that with some lithium grease, and you wouldn't have to replace the cables. So this afternoon, while I had it apart, I pulled on that really hard with a pair of pliers, and the black part did come out. I exposed the cable, and I sprayed some lithium grease in there just to see if that would have lubricated it. So if that in fact would fix the problem, it would save you a lot of pain and suffering doing this. And I sprayed some stuff in there. It didn't really do much. It would have been a little bit easier to shift, but I think it would have all leaked out eventually. Anyway, there you go.